August 1944, Forêt de Châtillon, Burgundy. The deep woods hide the scars of occupation, burned farmhouses, scarred roads, and the restless hush of a populace waiting for fate to turn. A battered jeep, freshly daubed with a Croix de Lorraine, slips through a break in the trees. At the wheel sits Jacques Dubois, a former schoolteacher, and now Maquis leader. The engine idles, its faint American stenciling nearly invisible beneath mud and repair patches. Rain patters on the hood, blending with the anxious whispers of fighters loading weapons, checking grenades, and scanning the horizon for German patrols. Tonight's plan is suicide, or genius. Allied supplies are thin, German reinforcements loom, but a message from London, coded through BBC airwaves, signals the time for revenge. The Maquis agents, joined by British SAS troopers, prepare to ambush a Nazi supply train using not horses, not bikes, but a collection of stolen jeeps. Their objective: cut the railway, liberate prisoners, and send a signal that the resistance cannot be silenced. Jacques looks around, recalling the dead from last month's German sweep. 37 Maquis murdered, some tortured, in reprisal for sabotage. For him, vengeance and survival are indistinguishable. What they didn't know was that a handful of cars, stolen from battlefield chaos and rebuilt by desperate hands, would change the fate of entire towns across France. The problem: crisis. The German occupation squeezes France with merciless efficiency. Railways, lifeblood of military movement, are guarded by armored convoys, railway police, and collaborationist paramilitaries. The Maquis, the rural guerrillas, suffer from isolation, outdated weaponry, and the constant threat of betrayal. In 1 month alone, German counterattacks claim dozens of lives. Attempts at traditional sabotage prove costly. The Maquis rely on clunky old Citroëns, battered bicycles, and stolen wagons to move munitions and wounded. Every escape risks exposure. Every assault risks annihilation. The logistics crisis is acute. False papers and disguises go only so far. Speed and firepower are outgunned by German armor, motorcycles, and well-equipped Feldgendarmerie units. But then, after Allied landings, a new hope emerges. Jeeps abandoned in retreat, taken in daring raids, or supplied in secret, Allied drops become the most valuable tools in the resistance arsenal. Fast, versatile, and able to traverse muddy logging roads where tanks or Kübelwagens cannot. The Maquis adapt quickly, realizing the Jeep isn't just a vehicle, it's a tactical shift, giving guerrillas the mobility to outmaneuver occupation troops and launch hit-and-run actions never before possible. The maverick, innovators, Dubois and his closest comrades, railwaymen, mechanics, and farmers, embrace the unfamiliar technology, often learning to repair jeeps via whispered instructions from British SAS advisors. One mechanic, Émile Rousseau, patches bullet holes with scrap and forges armor from downed panzer plates. In makeshift garages, they scavenge for American parts, sometimes trading with Allied aircrews for fuel, radio sets, and spare wheels. Among the Maquis, skepticism gives way to obsession. Dubois becomes a legend for his daring javelin operations, driving jeeps right up to German convoys, unleashing quick attacks, and disappearing before reinforcements arrive. He drove as if death had to catch him in the rear view, one survivor jokes. But every engine fire or broken axle is a reminder of fragility. Each repair is an act of defiance. When word spreads that jeeps can escape faster, haul more wounded, and attack with mounted Allied machine guns, other resistance cells demand captured vehicles of their own. The Jeep becomes the badge of the most daring Maquis groups, those willing to risk all for liberation. Jeep tactics in the shadows. The French resistance, particularly the Maquis, relied on the terrain, dense forests, rocky hills, and winding roads, to mask their movements and confound pursuit. A handful of jeeps equipped with machine guns or grenade racks became the centerpiece of a new kind of battle. Instead of static sabotage alone, cutting railway lines or derailing trains, the Maquis, joined by SAS units, initiated mobile ambushes, hit-and-run raids, and rapid sabotage of supply convoys. Most Maquis units operated in rural or mountainous regions, the Alps, Brittany, Limousin, or the Bugey. The Jeep's four-wheel drive allowed fighters to ford streams, cross muddy logging roads, and reach isolated hideouts unreachable by German vehicles. In training camps like Gorge above Montgrafon, recruits learned the art of guerrilla warfare. No large concentrations, no pitched battles, guerrilla tactics only. Captain Romans reminded his groups, passing the only machine gun from camp to camp, to ensure everyone could assemble and operate it blindfolded. Allies and resistance. Operation Wallace and Hardy. British SAS played a vital role. In summer 1944, Operation Wallace and Hardy saw teams of SAS men, armed jeeps, and French Maquis unite to cripple German supply lines in Burgundy. They attacked railway embankments, ambushed convoys, and repurposed jeeps as mobile raiding tools. The jeeps, often heavily armed with twin Vickers K or Browning machine guns, could unleash devastating firepower, then vanish into woods or villages before the enemy could react. Maquis mechanics adapted quickly. Jeeps, sometimes captured from retreating Germans or dropped by parachute, were modified for speed and stealth. Armor plating fashioned from scrap tanks, blackout lights, and even flame-retardant covers helped crews survive ambushes. Alliances with the SOE, Special Operations Executive, and OSS, Office of Strategic Services, provided radios, explosives, and crucial intelligence for coordinated strikes. Legendary ambushes and mobile sabotage, hit-and-run tactics became the Maquis trademark. Jeeps loaded with explosives or armed boarding parties sped along country lanes, destroyed isolated German fuel trucks, and rescued captured partisans within minutes. If the enemy heard an engine at night, they feared it was a Maquis jeep, remembered Henry Lefebvre, a saboteur in Limousin. Supply drops from Allied aircraft became more frequent as the Maquis proved their effectiveness. Codes transmitted via the BBC signaled an upcoming airdrop. Flashing fires marked landing zones, and jeep crews were first to retrieve the crates of weapons and radio sets. Mobility meant survival. When betrayal or a Gestapo raid threatened a camp, loaded jeeps could whisk key leaders and supplies to new hideouts before dawn. Support networks and unseen heroes. Jeep success hinged not only on daring raids, but on the invisible web of French villagers, factory workers, railwaymen, and farmers who sheltered fighters, shared intelligence, forged fake papers, and sabotaged production for the occupiers. In Lyon, blue-collar networks at Citroën factories slowed German truck production, subtly sabotaging oil indicators so convoys broke down far from safety. Every jeep raid was a communal effort. Children signaled when Germans passed, farmers blocked roads with fallen trees, and railwaymen provided timetables for attack windows. In one celebrated case, workers at the Peugeot factory collaborated with resistance leader Harry Ray to blow up turbines and transformers, shutting down Panzer production for months. No air raid needed. For every daring raid, the shadow of loss loomed. German counterattacks after sabotage operations were severe. Maquis camps burned, hostages taken, and reprisals enacted, sometimes wiping out villages suspected of helping the resistance. Operation Hardy alone, the legendary SAS Maquis jeep action in Burgundy, began on the 27th of July 1944 with just 7 jeeps parachuted in alongside 55 men. The previous month saw 2,000 German troops sweep the region, resulting in the torture and execution of 37 local fighters. Resistance leaders faced constant calculation, risk the speed and firepower of jeep-borne attacks, or play it safe and lose momentum. Every destroyed convoy or bridge invited German retaliation, yet the cost of inaction was higher: deportations, executions, and starvation under occupation. Legendary jeep raids: Wallace, Hardy, Bullbasket. In August 1944, Roy Farron of the SAS led jeep teams in coordinated ambushes along railway lines. Armed with Vickers K guns mounted for rapid fire, they shredded German troop trains and supply trucks, resulting in hundreds of enemy casualties. One night-long firefight killed 100 Germans and destroyed 9 trucks, a dozen cars, and derailed a troop train. Jeep raids were so effective that German survivors often believed they faced the advance guard of Patton's U.S. Third Army, not irregular partisans and British commandos. The psychological effect was enormous. As Farron later recalled in his memoir, fear rode with the sound of the jeep engine in the dark. But jeep raids had consequences. SAS records from Operations Wallace and Hardy show 17 troopers lost, including parachuting accidents, firefights, and executions. Jeep losses were heavy: 16 destroyed, some overturned during night drops, others captured or disabled in combat. The Germans often replied with mass hostage takings, but sometimes spared civilians after SAS bodies were discovered, believing regular Allied troops, not villagers, were responsible for the attacks. Operations like Bullbasket saw SAS jeep patrols attacking German panzer convoys, laying mines and training resistance fighters. When camps were betrayed, tragic reprisals followed. 33 Allied commandos executed in the woods near Saint-Sauvant, one leader beaten to death, others forced to dig their own graves. Mobility changed tactics. Where once ambushes depended on luck and perfect timing, jeeps allowed Maquis and SAS to launch coordinated strikes and escape before counterattack. In Limousin, Brittany, and the Alps, jeep raids derailed German logistics, set fuel depots ablaze, and sabotaged troop movements. Each successful operation bolstered morale. Supply drops increased. 36 sorties brought fresh jeeps and ammunition, enabling the resistance to press harder with every passing week. Prisoners rescued, convoys burned, and bridges destroyed became symbols for a nation in waiting. Jeep warfare, by mid-1944, was at the heart of the turning tide. The Allied blueprint, coordination across borders. As summer 1944 progressed, the French resistance transformed from isolated guerrilla units into a formidable, semi-organized force, thanks in large part to improved coordination with the British SAS, American OSS operatives, and specialized SOE agents. Plans were made not as isolated dashes for survival, but as part of a continent-wide strategy. Every jeep raid drew German attention, dispersing their forces and weakening defenses against the coming Allied armies. Operation Wallace and Hart emerged into a campaign of confusion. Major Roy Farron's SAS-equipped jeep units, after linking up with the Maquis near Châtillon-sur-Seine, launched repeated strikes across Burgundy. The Shadow Army ran on local maps, coded BBC messages, and the loyalty of villagers who fed, sheltered, and healed jeep crews in secret. Jeep raids deep in enemy lines. In late August, more than 60 men and 20 jeeps landed by air near Rennes, already under threat from Patton's advances. The convoy split, each jeep column moving 30 minutes apart, harder to detect, faster to recover if ambushed. Their path from Brittany to the Loire covered over 200 miles behind German lines. Thierry Blanchard, a French participant, described it. By day we hid the jeeps in barns. By night we raced, sometimes with headlights off, always ready to shoot or swerve away. When a German train full of reinforcements neared a sabotaged line, a volley of Vickers fire from jeep-mounted SAS guns brought it to a halt, scattering panicked soldiers who thought the American army had come. Sometimes retreating German units abandoned vehicles, extra jeeps for the Maquis, ever fueling their mobility. Operation Kipling and the surrender at Autun, large SAS formations, up to 46 jeeps and over 100 men, operated under code names like Operation Kipling. After multiple parachute drops, resistance forces raided German-occupied towns, destroyed convoys, and set fuel stores aflame. In Les Ormes, 2 jeeps rushed the square, riddling enemy trucks with fire before a firefight forced a withdrawal, leaving only a wreck behind. Such audacity paid off. By September, SAS and Maquis patrols met General de Latre's first French army advancing north, using jeeps to help negotiate the surrender of 3,000 German soldiers at Autun. Allied columns rolled with partisans at their flanks. Rural France bore the scars of resistance, but also the jubilant chaos of liberation, the human face of liberation. As the Allies pushed toward the Rhine, jeeps became the face of the end. In town after town, Maquis fighters appeared in captured or airdropped vehicles, canvas covers flapping, tricolor flags flying, and often entire families clinging to the sides to escape the retreating Wehrmacht. Resistance radio operators relayed news of upcoming Allied advances, positioning jeep patrols to fan out and liberate key crossroads and rail junctions. One teenager from the Morvan Woods later recalled, "We had lived for years in fear. Then suddenly, a jeep with Maquis and a Brit, the first free faces we'd seen, drove into town. For us, that was the end of the war." In Paris and beyond, the jeep became both tool and symbol, liberator, ambulance, and parade vehicle all at once. With liberation sweeping across France, the jeep was adopted and cherished as much in peacetime as it had been in war. Immediately, surplus jeeps found new roles: farming, police patrols, village transport, and field medical aid in rural clinics. Their robust build and simple mechanics made them invaluable for rebuilding shattered infrastructure. Mechanics who had patched jeeps under gunfire now taught village apprentices how to adapt them for plowing, hauling, and even transporting schoolchildren to newly reopened classes. The Maquis leaders, newly minted officers in the French army or returning to civilian life, took pride in seeing their battered symbols of defiance rolling calmly through newly free streets. The Croix de Lorraine on jeeps became emblematic, worn and faded, but honored. Paris, Bordeaux, and Lyon all saw parades of tricolor flagged jeeps, sometimes carrying resistance fighters and generals, sometimes ferrying jubilant families past the ruins of town halls. Jeep DNA and military evolution. The legacy of jeep-powered resistance ran far beyond France. In post-war doctrine, the value of fast, versatile, easy-to-repair vehicles became clear. Generals and planners across NATO and Warsaw Pact alike adopted Jeep-inspired designs for everything from border patrols to airborne troops. French engineers refined the concept into their own M201 Jeep, used through the Algerian War and into the late 20th century. Special forces in Britain, Israel, and the US recognized that mobility is morale and built elite units, often focused on unconventional warfare, around Jeep-style vehicles and rapid deployment tactics first proven in Burgundy and Brittany. Today, every modern military's light tactical vehicle owes something to the ingenuity and daring of those engineers and guerrillas who made the impossible possible. Memory and symbolism. Decades later, Jeeps remain in French memory. Photographs from August 1944 show columns rolling into Paris and provincial capitals, cheered by crowds and immortalized by poets and journalists. In one especially poignant image, a family shelters by a Jeep amidst Liberation Street fighting, the vehicle acting as both shield and hope. Museums across France hold restored Maquis Jeeps as centerpieces. Memorial rides, historical reenactments, and resistance commemorations evoke the moment when Jeep became synonymous with freedom and ingenuity. Children climb aboard for stories, veterans touch the faded stencils, and the rumble of the engine recalls both fear and courage. Reflection, the enduring revolution. What began with a few desperate mechanics and bold partisans changed how nations fought, remembered, and rebuilt. The Jeep in the Resistance is not simply a story of metal and rubber, but a tale of how adaptation, improvisation, and unity in crisis can overcome even the greatest tyranny. In France, Jeep is more than a brand. It is a testament to endurance, transformation, and the unstoppable drive for liberty. The revolution is complete when it becomes invisible. No phrase rings truer. Today's police SUVs, military rigs, farm vehicles, and even Parisian taxicabs echo the lines and logic first etched in War and Hope. Jacques Dubois, the school teacher turned fighter, is remembered as someone who never sought recognition, only the means, however unexpected, to bring hope to those in hiding. His legacy lives not only in faded photographs, but in every road conquered by courage and innovation. Subscribe for more true stories of war, invention, and resistance. And remember, no road to freedom is traveled alone.